Dünyada şimdi farklı bir oturumumuz olacak. Düşük gelirli bir dünyada yatırım bankacılığı, özel sermaye ve bankacılık dışı finansal kurumlar oturumunu modere etmek üzere 24 TV Ekonomi Müdürü Sayın Zeliha Saracı ve konuşmalarını gerçekleştirmek üzere Türkiye Cumhuriyeti Merkez Bankası Banka Meclisi Üyesi Sayın Doçent Doktor Ahmet Faruk Aysan'ı, Türksel Grup CFO'su Sayın Murat Doğan Erden'i, Willis Group Holdings Küresel Finans Enstitüleri Endüstrisi Başkanı Sayın Mary Okanar'ı ve Azimut Holding Grup Ülke Müdürü Sayın Giorgia Medda'yı sahneye davet ediyoruz.
Herkese iyi günler diliyorum. Hoş geldiniz siz de. Evet, İstanbul Finans Zirvesi bu oturumda az önce başlığı da okuduk. Düşük gelirli bir dünyada yatırım bankacılığı, özel sermaye ve bankacılık dışı finansal kurumlar oturumumuz. Panelistlerimiz de az önce takdim ettiler. Önce tabii biz şehitlerimize başsağlığı dileyerek başlamak istiyorum ben. Daha doğrusu şehit yakınlarına ve Allah'tan rahmet diliyorum şehitlerimize. Biliyorum çok eğlenceli bir ortam yok ama devam etmek zorundayız Türkiye olarak. Bizler bütün ekonomi dünyası, ekonomi çevresi, finans, reel sektör ne olursa olsun yolumuza devam etmek zorundayız. Mecburuz, en azından bunu biz yapmalıyız. Siyaseti siyasetlere bırakacağız galiba. Evet, aslında şimdi teker teker konuşmaları almak istiyorum ben. Önce sizden başlayalım isterseniz. Bir sunumu olacak kendisinin. Doçent Doktor Ahmet Faruk Aysan'ın Türkiye Cumhuriyeti Merkez Bankası Banka Meclis Üyesi.
Evet, günaydın herkese. Ben de öncelikle bu organizasyonda emeği geçen Profesör Doktor Murat Yülek ve tüm organizasyon ekibine çok teşekkür ediyorum davetleri için. İstanbul Finans Zirvesi her sene takip ettiğimiz 6 sene olmuş bir zirve. İstanbul Finans Merkezi olması çerçevesinde de böyle zirvelerin yapılıyor olması önemli. Birçok İstanbul Finans Merkezi'ne dair konferanslar yapılıyor. Fakat herhalde en fazla takip edilen, benim en azından en fazla önem verdiğim toplantılardan bir tanesi İstanbul Finans Zirvesi. Çok değerli konuşmacıları dinliyoruz. Ben şahsım adına da çok teşekkür ediyorum bu toplantılardan. Çok faydalanıyorum. Benim konuşmam biraz daha teknik bir konuşma olacak. Başlıkla alakalı olarak düşük büyüme ortamında ki neler var düşük büyüme ortamında, bizi nasıl bir dünya şu an karşılıyor? Diğer konuşmacılar için de iyi bir başlangıç olabilir. İsterseniz ben İngilizce devam edeyim. Çünkü sunum İngilizce daha kolay olabilir. Bir de İstanbul Finans Merkezi olacaksa belki daha da iyi olabilir. Again, thank you for kindly inviting me to this wonderful event. My talk will be on the global low growth and the low interest environment. I will try to portray the current picture, which will be probably helpful for the other speakers. I will not touch upon to the policy discussions much, but I will just portray the picture. So what is the low interest rate environment? Government bond yields are exceptionally low in recent years. This is due to the global crisis, due to the quantitative easing. But this is partly probably explained by the low inflation environment, especially in developed countries. Developing countries' inflation environment has not changed much, actually, even after the global crisis. But especially for developed countries, we have very low inflation rates, and this is likely to continue in the upcoming years. That is what we see for the ECB, and we have seen this earlier on for the case of Japan, and it is likely to have this low inflation environment for the developed countries in the upcoming years. So one reason is definitely the asset purchase programs are the usual suspects for sure, but more importantly probably, depending on how you run the causality, but definitely low growth environment is the main reason for lower equilibrium real interest rate. Definitely, you may not want to name this as equilibrium interest rate because the central banks are involved and they printed money, too much money, and this might be not the really equilibrium interest rate. It might be the prevailing interest rate, but it may not be long-term real interest rate for many developed countries. But still, given that the central banks are in play, we have such a case, and it is likely that as the growth rates increases, if the growth rate increases, we will see increasing real interest rate. But given that we have still vague growth prospect for many developed countries, this low interest rate environment is likely to continue, remain with us as long as we have low growth rates. And the economic growth prospect also for developed countries especially are not very promising. In this figure, for example, we have real GDP growth from 1990 to 2014. You see high growth rates, but when we come to working age population in those years, we have high growth rates in the working age population. But from 2015 to 2040, especially for developed countries, we expect very low, even negative growth rates for the working age population. So when we think about the growth, some of the growth is the cyclical, there is a cyclical aspect of the growth, and the growth is likely to continue to increase a bit with the declining effect of the global crisis. But when we look at the fundamentals are not that promising for developed countries. The working age population is not increasing as much as it used to be in the last 14, 15 years. So this is a real challenge, and this also tells us that if the growth is the main reason for the low interest rate, this low interest rate is likely to continue if we don't have reach higher growth rates. Definitely countries are differing in that respect. US was the first country entering into the crisis, and it was the initiator of the global crisis for sure, but in the last couple of years, US is outperforming other countries. Credit growth is much better right now in United States, as you see in this figure. Credit growth rates in 2014 have started to be much bigger than the average of 2006, 2014 to 13. This is not the case for Euro area. This is probably Germany is in a better shape. It is not the case for sure for Japan. There is negative credit growth. For emerging market countries, we had high credit growth rates, but except Indonesia, in all other emerging market countries in this figure, as you see, credit growth is not as big as before. So if the credit growth is one of the reasons for the high growth, as Mr. Karaviana has mentioned today in this keynote address, we see this less in 2014. This is due to tapering. This is due to the high credit expansion in emerging market countries earlier on. But this is also a real challenge and real risk for the emerging market countries. Low nominal interest rates helps the government to reduce the debt servicing costs. So especially for developed countries, debt to GDP ratios are historically high. It is relatively, the emerging countries, developing countries are in a better shape in that regard, so they have some space there probably. But still, when the interest rate increases for developed countries, they will have difficulty probably in servicing to that. So there's another incentive for not to increase the interest rates for developed countries, because they start having more debt to GDP ratios, and it will also pose another challenge for the governments of developed countries. But given that we have low interest rate environment, what is the problem? The problem is the it is again mentioned by the BIS report last year, this low interest rate environment triggers high volatility, high risk environment. So as you see in this graph, instead of funds flowing to long-term investments, funds are mostly flowing towards the high-yield investments. Even, for example, the startling case is the emerging market. As you see, in 2014 and 2015, there's an outflow of capital from emerging market countries, but this outflow is mostly compensated with the high-yield inflows to developed countries' corporates. Like we see this here, for example, global high-yield corporations' total returns are increasing, and they are, in a sense, substituting the flows to emerging markets. So developed countries' funds, instead of investing in emerging markets, they prefer to invest in their home countries, but with a higher risk profiles. Which might be another concern, as mentioned by Mr. Koreana, the CEO of BIS. This may not really due to the fundamentals of developed countries. This might be related with the concerns about the emerging market countries. My personal belief is that most likely emerging market countries still are better investment, provide better investment opportunities for developed countries as opposed to investing in high yield corporate bonds in developed countries. But still, this depends on the market. Markets seem to be diverting its attention more to global high-yield corporations. Yield-seeking investments distorts pricing of the risks. Risk is priced much lower than it should be probably for developed countries. And withdrawal of the central bank liquidity and normalizing interest rates bring another tension for the market. So the volatility increase with this talks about the tapering, starting with tapering in 2013, and still that process is continuing on. These compressed volatilities are set to soar with the policy normalization. So especially in last 6 months or so, we have experienced this quite vividly. There's increasing volatility as this talks about the tapering, talks about interest rate hikes increases. The volatility in the financial markets increases as well. Markets becomes increasingly data dependent in that regard. As you see here, the Citigroup G10 Economic Surprise Index is fluctuating quite similarly or very highly correlated with the 3-month change in the 10 years government bond. So there is too much data dependency and it increases even more volatility. It creates more volatility in the market. So what is the problem? The problem is for emerging markets, since 2013, there's an outflow of funds, equity funds and the bonds from emerging market countries. Turkey is in the middle. There's sometimes outflows, but Turkey is in the middle. There is sometimes outflow and inflow, but in net, there is not much outflow from Turkey. But for many other emerging market countries, as you see, emerging market equity flows are still showing negative figures. Low yield environment also represent the most prominent is for the pension funds. Pension funds positions throughout the world is increasing. This is also very important for developed countries. For example, for Netherlands, the pension fund size is about 1.6 times more than the GDP. So they're high saving countries, but this is the case for developed countries because of the demographics also. They saved a lot in the past and they have aging population and they have to invest more in the pension funds. But these pension funds are increasingly investing in higher risk portfolios like the equity shares or the stock market investments instead of government bonds or other forms of investments. They start to investing more. And this is the case for almost all the countries throughout the world. And for they also invest more lower rated investment assets in North America, in Eurozone, and in other Europe. the share of lower rated assets in their overall portfolio is increasing. Again, the reason is under the low risk and under the low interest rate environment, they are seeking higher risk portfolios. What is the reason for that? The reason is they have to make money to provide some returns for their investors. And this is likely to continue because the old age dependency ratios for developed countries are still increasing. I mean, just think about Japan, for example. It is the ratio of population over 65 divided by the population between 15 and 64 is about 45% in Japan. So half of the population is considered to be in the dependency age. We are lucky in that regard. Turkey is lowest in this figure, the lowest curve. And it is the case for Germany, France, and others. There's aging population. They are relying more on the pension funds. They have to save now such that in their retirement they are going to use that money. But the problem is that the pension funds are not bringing that much of return. We see it here, for example, from 2012 to 2013, when emerging market countries are heavily invested, the average weighted return was 9.9 for the pension funds. But today, in 2014, not today, but at the end of 2014, the weighted average is just 4.5, which is relatively, I mean, half of the return they get in the previous years. So that is a real threat, because once they have lower return, they are going to engage in more risky businesses. This is stated by the BIS report again, but this is likely to remain with us a real challenge, because these pensioners need to get some income, and in order for the pension funds to remain attractive and also to provide benefits for the retirees, for the benefits for the elderly, they have to make return, and these returns are not that attractive at this moment, so they are engaging in more risky activities. Probably another asset class, in that not just the pension funds, but another asset class might be considered is the Islamic financial products. They are providing also another alternatives, which is part of this session, non-banking assets. They seem to perform better during the global crisis, and it provides an alternative source of investment opportunities, not just for the Muslims or for Islamic countries, but also for overall investors. They seem to be performing better. Islamic equity index outperforms the emerging market index. So these are alternative source of alternative products might be heavily invested in this low interest environment. And what is good is to be able to invest in alternative sources, but they will not contain too much risk. As an example, I would like to show this, but that will be the real challenge for the investment funds. This will be the real challenge for the pension funds, how to invest in low interest rate environment without taking too much risk. So my overall conclusion is that this is a different period. In the past, we were discussing about the central bank policies, but the low growth environment is likely to remain with us for a while. And in this low growth environment, with low interest rate environment, we have other challenges of managing the risks. And we have to be even more careful today. That's why today's session is, I guess, very well chosen. We are likely to continue to discuss these issues in the upcoming. So I would like to portray the general picture. So hopefully we will continue this. Thank you.
Teşekkür ediyoruz sunumumuz için. Sayın Aysan, anlattıklarınızdan şöyle yapayım şunu. Aslında biraz daha realiteye dile getirmek gerekiyor zannediyorum. Şöyle ki neydi konumuz? Düşük gelirli bir dünyada yatırım bankacılığı. Gelir dağılımı adaletsizliğinden ve dünyada yaşanan krizin bundan çıktığını herhalde biliyoruz. Hepimiz hemfikiriz. Şu anki dünyada az önce Sayın Aysan'ın da bahsetmiş olduğu gibi işte merkez bankaları tehditleri, kur savaşları, Çin tehdidi, insanlar kazandıkları paraları bir şekilde tasarrufa döndürmeye çalışıyorlar. Alternatif bir tasarruf yolu da zannediyorum çok fazla yok. Borsalar belli, yeni zirvelerinde faizler oldukça düşük. Türkiye için konuşacağım. Alternatif yatırım aracımızda çok fazla maalesef yok. Faiz ki dolar gibi yatırım aracı değil. Altın o da değil. Dolayısıyla alternatif yatırım ya da bankacılık dışı finansal yatırımlara da ihtiyaç var. Net gözüküyor anladığımız kadarıyla. Evet, aslında birazdan sunumlar bittikten sonra burada genel birbirimize soruları da alabileceğiz. Şimdi Küresel Finans Enstitüleri Endüstrisi Başkanı Biz Group Holdings'ten Mary Connor, isterseniz konuşmanız için size söz verelim.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here today. No. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here today and to be part of this wonderful group of people. I've had the opportunity to learn so much and also to get some ideas for how we can help our clients as they're facing the risks and the opportunities from this environment. In particular, I want to thank our speaker because I think you've set the scene really well for some of the things that we're seeing across the piece. I run the Global Financial Institutions Group at Willis, and so my job is to go to clients around the world and to talk to them about the things that are creating opportunities for them and how they can manage their risks. And we're seeing, I think, two big trends, two big outcomes coming out of the factors that we have just discussed, and that is that banking, and in particular credit, is stressed. And I think that's why you're seeing some of the outcome of the flows away from emerging markets and into developed economies. And at the same time, non-bank financial institutions and non-banking sources of credit are rising. And I think the challenge for an economy like Turkey and for clients and businesses in Turkey is how do we take advantage of this change? I think the change from what I see around the world is happening. So I think it's how do you look at the different factors that are driving those changes to try to take advantage of it. We kind of think that a lot of these shifts are due to a number of megatrends, is what we call them, big factors that are changing how the economies across the world are working together. The first one is investment returns and the low return environment. I think that's been set up really well. You are seeing a lot of pressure on banks, and particularly investment banks, to try to make returns, as well as the insurance companies and the asset managers are really under stress. At the same time, this is really being exacerbated by regulatory change. And the thing I think that's driving this as much as anything else across the globe is the requirement by regulators that the investment banks hold more capital and more liquid capital. As a result of having to hold more capital, it's putting a real pressure on them in terms of lending and in terms of the amount of investment and other resources that they can put towards riskier things. So you're seeing everything from some of the big banks exiting traditional areas that were pointed at emerging markets. So like JP Morgan getting out of the commodities business, to a really, really sharp reduction in long-term lending, because banks investment banks in particular, but commercial banks too, don't want long-dated assets on their books because it's very difficult for them to match those. So there's a real interplay between the low interest rate environment and some of the regulatory requirements. That's being exacerbated by some of the other things that we're seeing. So technology. Technology is changing how people are viewing investment and returns. In particular, some of these non-bank financial institutions are harnessing technology to, again, put pressure on the traditional players, on the traditional banks. And that's adding to this kind of change in the environment. And I think, there's a report from McKinsey that says in 10 years, the 5 of the top 10 financial institutions will be technology companies and not traditional banks anymore. And I think there's some truth to that. The other thing is demographics, and we've talked about demographics and the pressure that is putting on things. So the banks are having to reorient their offerings around these changes in demographics. And at the moment, they're not allocating their assets, I think, properly around that because they're in a time of structural change. And finally, people, talent. We're seeing a real push of talent from the traditional banking sector, particularly in the US and the UK, towards other areas, tech. So the CFO of a major bank in New York just recently left to go to Google. So some of these investment banks are really under stress, I think, in terms of how they make money, and that's, I think, starting to impact that. But the upside, I think, is that non-bank financial institutions have the potential to take the place of that. And I think if you can, as a customer and a consumer, if you're thinking about how you want to invest, some of that should be starting to come online. And I think that those non-bank financial institutions, because they're operating more profitably, because they have fewer regulatory constraints, they're risk takers. They have more of a capability, I think, to assess risk maybe in a way that could be very helpful for Turkey and for other countries. So some of the things we're seeing on that is long-term investments. You're starting to see insurance companies, the asset side of insurance companies, the ones that are looking for returns, starting to consider long-term infrastructure and infrastructure funds. And in some of the countries where I work, we're seeing actual groupings of them getting together with government and with other entities to create platforms to try to drive long-term investment. You are seeing different types of lending coming out of private equity, for instance. So Apollo, Blackstone, people like that are setting up funds, again, for long-term infrastructure projects because they can take a longer view. You're seeing different types of lenders. Technology is driving that. Peer-to-peer lending that you're starting to see that started in the low-end, consumer finance area, but we're starting to see it move now more into infrastructure and into project lending. They use insurance actually very creatively on that to try to spread the risk on it. And last but not least, we're seeing it in our space in insurance. We have an enormous amount of capital that is flowing into insurance that is allowing insurance to act more like finance than it ever has in the past. So traditional credit risk and political risk products we're now using in much higher quantities. They're very capital helpful for the banks too, so they can help projects along. We're seeing that. There's an awful lot of creation of things like weather derivatives. So where you might have either said, I'll take the risk on on my balance sheet, you can de-risk projects by saying, if there's a earthquake, then you get this payout. So I think I think it's really balancing when you think about the medium term over the next 5 years. I think that there's going to be continued pressure on the lending side, on the traditional lending side. But I think there is going to be creativity, and I'd really be interested to hear from all of you, in Turkey, whether we can harness some of that creativity, because I think there's also real opportunities for thinking differently about how we finance projects, how we finance companies, and how you can make things more efficient in what's a new environment. Because the regulations, I don't think are going, the world regulations, that is, aren't going to change a lot in the near term. The financial crisis is still there in people's heads. So I think those regulations aren't going to change. So it's how things are going to maneuver around them to the new equilibrium. Thank you.
Teşekkür ediyoruz konuşması için. Şimdi size bırakacağım zaten hemen söz arkasından. Devam edeceğiz. Meral Kanır'a, Wills Group Holdings'in Küresel Finans Endüstrisi Başkanı. Ve Sayın Murat Doğan Erden, hoş geldiniz. Türksel Grup CFO'su. Şimdi çok değerli bilgiler ve açıklamalar da gerçi şöyle yapıyorlar konuşmacılarımız, panelistlerimiz. Sizden de bu özel sermaye ve bankacılık dışı finansal kurumlar ve gerçekten düşük gelirli bir dünyada insanların şöyle konuştuğunuz zaman arkadaşlarınıza vesaire, burası olsun, yurt dışı olsun, kafalarda çok net değil. Çünkü bilindik bir bankacılık sistemi, yatırım bankacılığı sistemi varken şimdi az sonra konuşacağız. Sukuk'tan da bahsettiler Sayın Aysan Beyler. Sizden de konuşmanızı rica edeceğiz.
Çok teşekkür ederim. Öncelikle ben de bir klasik olarak 6. yılında İstanbul Finans Zirvesi, bunun organize eden sevgili Üstad Murat Yürek, kendisine teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Aynı zamanda bu organizasyonun fikir önderlerinden şu anda yanımızda değil ama kendisini anmak ve teşekkürlerimizi iletmemiz lazım Sayın Ali Babacan'a. Bu organizasyonun, bu inisiyatifin başlamasından bugünlere gelmesi de çok büyük emekleri olmuştur kendisinin. Kendisine de teşekkür ederim. Şimdi soracaksınız, bütün bu finansal kurumların olduğu, katılımcıların finans sektörünün olduğu yerde Turkcell neden en önemli sponsor? Turkcell neden bu sürece yıllardır katılıyor? Murat Erden eski bir bankacı olduğundan dolayı mı? Yok. Murat Erden bir finanstan sorumlu olduğundan dolayı mı? Değil. Şirket açısından baktığımızda şöyle bir durum, size birkaç tane veri söyleyeyim. Biraz evvelki konuşmalarda var, Sayın Bakanımızda da var. Aradığımız bu mevcut orta gelir veya düşük gelir tuzağından çıkma ile ilgili birinci ihtiyacımız olan altyapıların değiştirilmesi, altyapılardaki iyileştirme, ikincisi de yapısal reformlar denildi. Biraz evvel değerli konuşmacımız bize şunu söyledi, dünyada gelirler düşüyor, aynı zamanda regülasyonlar artıyor ve bunun paralelinde de esasında teknoloji de öyle değişiyor ki yaptığımız işin doğası değişiyor. Bu teknoloji değişimi zaman zaman tehdit diye algılanıyor, zaman zaman da fırsat oluyor. İşte burada bizim Turkcell ve Turkcell'in içinde bulunduğu bilgi ve iletişim teknolojileri önemli bir rol alıyor. Bizim esasında en önemli buradaki katma değerimiz, bütün sektörlerin müşterilerine, bu hane halkına ulaşırken yaratacakları katma değerlilerde, servislerinde fark yaratmaları ve büyümelerine destek olmamızdaki gösterdiğimiz altyapı ve servislerimiz. Baktığınız zaman Türkiye'nin son 15 senesinin içerisinde, ki bu 15 senenin içerisindeki Türkiye'nin hala tek yurt dışında Amerika'da kote olan şirketi olarak devam ediyoruz. Bununla birlikte belli bir şeffaflık, belli bir finansal doğruluğu ve bununla birlikte Türkiye'yi temsil etme rolümüz de var. Ancak şunu söylememiz lazım, en önemli rolümüz Türkiye'deki bankacılık sektörü gelişirken biz de buraya ciddi bir katma değer sağladığımızı düşünüyorum. Bankacılık sektörümüze baktığınızda 2001 yılından krizinden çıktıktan sonra dünyadaki bütün bankacılık sektörüne de örnek teknolojik gelişimleri müşterilerine sundular. Çıkış da aynı şekilde bankacılık sektöründe teknolojiden geçiyor. Şu andaki mevcut büyümedeki kısıtlı tek haneli büyümelerden çıkmak için de mevcut dünyadaki bu değişime ayak uydurmamız gerekiyor. Bizim de buradaki rolümüz esasında sonuçta gidilen yer tek müşteri. Müşteriyle birlikte hane halkı. Onun gelirini arttırmamız lazım. O gelirle birlikte onun tüketimini sağlamamız lazım. Oraya müşteriye giderken bizim esasında yapmamız gereken ona en hızlı şekilde gidip ona fark yaratmamız gerekiyor. Rekabette farklılaşmanız için teknolojiyi çok iyi kullanmanız lazım. Bizim Turkcell'in altyapısındaki biraz evvel de bahsedildi. Sadece 2 hafta evvelki sözümüz 1.6 milyar euroluk bir frekans için artı KDV'siyle 2 milyar euroyu bulan bir yatırım taahhüdünde bulunuyoruz. Bu sadece frekansın kendisi. Yılda 2,5 milyar TL'ye yakın yatırım yapılıyor. Yani bahsedilen yüzler, 200'ler değil arkadaşlar. Tamamıyla bunu bir rakamsal olaraktan bir boyut olarak paylaşmamız lazım. Bunun hepsi Türkiye'nin içerisindeki Türkiye'nin farklılaşması için en büyük altyapı. Biz belki 4G'yi 4.5G veya 5 olaraktan çalışıyoruz. Bizim teknolojileri tüketen değil, teknolojilerin üretiminde ve aynı zamanda bunların kullanan şirketleriyle birlikte büyüyebiliriz. Bizim bu altyapıyı eğer kullandıramazsak zaten bunun bir anlamı yok. Niçin yapıyoruz? Bunu hem müşteriler için yapıyoruz hem bankacılık sektörüyle ilgili. Bunu da en iyi kullanan sektörler, Türkiye için stratejik sektörler, telekomünikasyon, bankacılık ve enerji. Evet. Biz bu 3 stratejik sektörlerde eğer ivmeyi, farklılaşmayı yakalayabilirsek o zaman dünyada farklılaşabileceğiz, ileri seviyeye gideceğiz. Diğer bir gelişim alanımız, dünyada iletişim ve bilgi teknolojileri büyüyor. Bir bilgi toplumuysanız bu bilgi nerede? Bu bilgiyi nerede saklıyorsunuz? Bu bilgiyi belli bir yerde sakladıktan sonra o bilginin analitiğini yapmanız lazım. O kadar çok bilgi var ki. Bu bilgileri nerede topladığınızla ilgili de ülkemizdeki en önemli eksikliklerden biri de veri merkezleri.
Sanırım Sayın Genel Müdür'ün New York'taki toplantısında Türkiye'nin asıl cari açığı veri toplama açığı diye konuşması
bizim
vardı.
verilerle ilgili, aynen öyle Züleyha Hanım, doğru söylüyorsunuz. Yani bizim kendi verilerimiz, Türkiye 70 küsür milyonluk nüfusu ve artan nüfusuyla birlikte ve teknolojide dikkat ederseniz her ay çıkan haberlerin içerisinde dünyadaki teknolojiler en hızlı uyum sağlayan demografiye sahibiz biz. Bütün verilerimizin hepsinin biriktiği, toplandığı, izlendiği yer Türkiye'nin dışı. Şimdi böyle bir ortamın içerisinde Türkiye olarak bizim yaptığımız 7.000 metrekarelik bir data merkezimiz var. Örnek olduğu için rakamları söylüyorum. Sadece önümüzdeki 6 ay içerisinde yıl sonuna kadar 10.000 metrekarelik bir Gebze'de data center kuruyoruz. Arkasından Ankara'da, arkasından İzmir'de. Bunu bütün sektörler olarak yapıyoruz ama burada da bir liderlik yapmak durumundayız. Diğer bir unsur, Türkiye'nin en büyük çağrı merkezi altyapısına sahibiz. 9 tane bankayla şu anda çalışıyoruz ama çalıştığımız her bankacılık sektörüyle şunu gördük ki ya direkt satış ya çağrı merkezinde biz zaten müşteri deneyiminde fark yaratmak üzere kurulmuş, DNA'sı öyle olan bir şirket olduğumuz için bunu bankacılık sektörüyle paylaştığımızda bankacılık sektörü, finans sektörü bu yaratıcı ürünlerinden tutun mevcut servisini de daha iyi veriyor. Ve hepsinde ciddi performans artışı oluyor.
Peki düşük gelirli diyoruz da konuşuyoruz. Düşük gelirli bir dünyada yaşıyoruz. İşte herkesin geliri, orta gelir tuzağından bahsediyoruz. Teknoloji burada Türkiye'nin hem teknoloji hem bankacılık ya da bu yatırım bankacılığı veya adına ne dersek yatırımların, tasarrufların bir araya getirilmesi. Teknolojiyi kullanma oranımız açısından ne noktadayız? Yani tüketicinin teknolojiyi kullanarak yatırım yapması online az önce bahsedildi biliyorsunuz konuşmalarda, panelistlerinde online bankacılıktan bahsediyoruz.
Evet. Dünyada diğer bir eğilim mobilite. Yani hepimiz şu anda sanal, benim şu anda göz teması yaptığım kitle sayısı %10. %90 şu anda cep telefonuna bakıyor veya cep telefonlarından bilgi yazıyor. Yani aynı anda multitask, dolu iş birlikte yapan bir gruptayız. Hep beraber böyle yaşıyoruz zaten. Dolayısıyla düşük gelir ortamından çıkarken Türkiye'deki insanlarımız buna demografisi olaraktan en uygun. Herhangi bir uygulamayı getirir, hemen deniyoruz. Yapılan en önemli küçük değişimde ya beğeniyoruz ya da hemen bırakabiliyoruz. İnternet bankacılığında dünyanın en önemli farklarından birini yarattık. Türkiye'deki örnekler yurt dışındaki şirketlerin ana merkezleri tarafından örnek haline geldi. Bizim şu andaki geldiğimiz noktadaki en önemli yapısal değişimdeki ihtiyacımız birincisi dijital dönüşüm. İkincisi de vergi yapısının son 15 seneki Türkiye ile şu andaki geldiğimiz Türkiye arasında büyük bir fark var. İkisini söyleyip tamamlayayım. Birincisi dijital dönüşüm. Şunu söyleyeyim. Bugün evini taşıyan bir insan, biri elektriğini, suyunu veya telefonunu, sabit telefonunu da değiştirmeyle ilgili istediğini bir yere söylüyor ve birkaç gün içerisinde geliyor ve sağlanıyor, değil mi? Faturanızı da yapıyorsunuz. İsteyen herhangi bir yurdun vatandaşı internetle ilgili fiber altyapıya sahip olabiliyor mu? Yok.
Evet.
Yani fiber bir lüks, yapamıyorsunuz. 35.000 kilometre altyapımız var. Gerekiyorsa istediği kadar yapacağız. İstanbul'da bu servisi sağlayamıyorsunuz. İstanbul'daki bir yurdun vatandaşı 1000 megabit per second dünyada 7 tane ülkede var. Bizde var, vatandaş kullanamıyor bunu. Bu bir lüks. Dijital dönüşümden kastettiğim bu yani. Bunu dijital olaraktan bir gerekli düzenlemeler yapacak. İsteyen insan istediği bilgiye bu fibere de ulaşabilecek olacak. Bilgi hızlı olarak ulaşılacak. İkincisi vergi yapısı. Biraz evvelki soru içerisinde de vardı ama bir örneği söyleyeyim ki biraz evvelki soruyu kaçıranlar şunu söylemiştik biz. Şöyle bir soru soruldu. Telekomünikasyon sektörü, bilgi iletişim sektörü ciddi bir katma değeri konusunda ve altyapı konusunda yatırımları var ama dünyanın sayılı en yüksek vergi veren yerlerinden. Yani bu bir yanlış anlamayın, sigara kullanmıyor olsam da sigara sektörüyle ilgili değil. Yani yüksek vergi alınması gereken, bu bir sağlığa zararlı olduğu için de değil. Bununla ilgili başlamış deprem zamanından gelen bir vergi özel iletişim vergisi olarak devam ediyor. Sayın Bakanımız, bakın buradaki Sayın Bakanımız 1,5 sene evvel datadan ÖİV'nin %25'ten %5'inin kararını alan kişidir. Destekleyen ve yaptı. 1,5 senedir bunu faturasız hatlarda uygulayamıyoruz. Çünkü altyapı ile ilgili gerekli düzenlemeleri yapamıyoruz. Yani Kanun geçiyor, kanun uygulanamıyor Türkiye'de. İşte bu değişim, yapısal değişimlerden bahsedilen biraz evvelki konu bu.
Evet.
Bunu söylemek istedim. Sağ
Çok
olun.
teşekkür ediyoruz. Evet, öyle bir durum var gerçekten de. Biz sizinle daha önceki özel görüşmelerde de bu sektördeki vergilerden ve vergi reformlarından da bahsetmiştik. Sanırım Sayın Bakan'a ki ben dinleyemedim. Bu soru soruldu. Yoktum. O yüzden bilmiyorum ne söylediğini ama.
Bu değişimde biz bankacılık sektörü, teknoloji sektörü, bilişim, bilgi sektörü hepimiz aynı gemideyiz. Onun için Türkiye'nin gelişmesi lazım. Onun için de hepimizin kendimize gelen görevi yapmamız gerekiyor. Onun için de her zaman için bu organizasyon ve bunun dışında bankacılık sektörüyle bütün entegrasyon, işbirliğinde hazırız. Onun için de yatırımlarımıza devam edeceğiz. Sağ olun.
Evet, iki ayrı dönüşüm, bir yapısal dönüşüm, bir de teknolojik dönüşüm. Şu an internet çağındayız. Zaten belki de bu yaşanan kapitalizmdeki krizin ana etmeni de internette bu kadar yoğun kullanılması olabilir. Herkesin her yerde gözü var. Evet, çok teşekkür ediyoruz tekrardan. Sohbete devam ederiz birazdan ama Georgia Medda, Azimut Holding Grup ülke müdürü kendisi. Kendisine de söz vereceğim ama ondan önce sukuktan biliyorsunuz az önce bahsetti Sayın Aysan da alternatif yatırım aracı olarak. Biraz gruptan da çok az bahsedeyim ben. Azimut Grup Global Sukuk Fonu'nu yönetiyor. Haziran 2015 itibariyle bildiğimiz kadarıyla 150 milyon dolar büyüklüğünde toplam varlık açısından söylüyoruz. Dünyanın en büyük sukuk fonu. Türkiye'de yatırımları olan bir grup Azimut Grup. Gerisini ben Sayın Medda'ya bırakayım.
Good morning, everybody. Let me thank the organizers of this excellent conference. I have to say I didn't have a chance to participate yesterday, but I've seen the topics, the quality speakers. This is absolutely one of those events that would help Istanbul and Turkey raising the profile in the international financial markets context. I would like also to thank the fellow speakers in this panel, obviously very high quality contributions. And let me spend just one word of gratitude for our speaker from the Central Bank of Turkey. When actually people ask me, why are you making business in Turkey? There are always a few elements that I mention, and the presence of a central bank so strong and so good in checking what's happening in the market, making the right decisions is also a reason why Turkey today is a country, although involved in the normal market volatility, doesn't suffer as much as other markets like South Africa, Brazil, or Russia. So knowing that there is a financial institution like the central bank, knowing what's happening, and I think the clear views expressed today witness the fact that we have the right people helping the economy and the country, obviously, to navigate through very rough times. Let me give you a bit of description of Azimut, also to give a bit of context about the few thoughts that I would like to share with you today. Azimut is one of the leading independent asset management companies in Europe. What we do asset management, so we manage money for individuals, for corporates. We do it actually in a pretty large size. $40 billion is the size of our assets under management. We operate in 13 countries, so we are not only in Europe, we are covering essentially all the time zones, all the continents are markets where we operate, Europe, Asia, Australia, South America, Northern America. It's a fairly large non-banking financial institution with a big number of people, partners working together, 1,600 financial advisors, more than 80 people involved every day in managing money across the different markets and asset classes. Azimut is also listed in the Milan Stock Exchange, $4 billion of market capitalization, net profits every year in excess of $250 million. So it's a company that has been over the last 30 years helping, as I said, individuals and institutions to manage money. Doesn't really matter which level of interest rates or market conditions, always trying to generate returns. And we have been operating in Turkey since 2012 in a market that probably is not known for a low level of interest rates. I think, obviously coming to a financial marketplace like Turkey, questions that we often are asked by our investors is try to beat what is the prevailing time deposits yield, what is the prevailing rate paid by the banks. And so we are very often challenged by our prospects, by our existing customers on providing solutions that could help them beating whatever is already available through the conventional financial distribution channels, the banks, in fact. Obviously, this question poses us a challenge because interest rates are very high in Turkey. They are not that high when we look at them in real rates, in real terms, and obviously we look at real interest rates when we try to propose our investment solutions to our customers. But very often, you know, when we are asked the question, how can you make me money? We don't try to give a straight answer. Actually, we ask another question to the customer. We say, what do you do with your money? Because this is the key point, because everybody wants to make money, everybody wants to beat whatever level of interest rates is available in the market, but what do we do with our money? So we really try to understand what the expectations are in the context of the real life objectives, because apart from the big macro pictures, you know, the daily volatility, currency, equities, fixed income, you know, reality is that every day when we come out of home to go to the office or to take our kids to school, we have concerns, we have worries, we have objectives. So when it comes to what to do with our money with low, high interest rates, really we need to understand what we want to do with it. And so we started analyzing some important elements in the investor's decision, let's say, a score card. First of all, what is the level of risk profile? Everybody would say at first that is a very low risk investor. Then when you start seeing, in fact, how low returns low risk investments can generate, people are happy to move up a bit in the risk ladder and to say they are medium risk. Actually, we have investors that very fast, they immediately declare that they are very high risk because they want to make a lot of money. So once you understand the risk profile, a second important element is the investment horizon. Obviously, the shape of the yield curve, doesn't matter which country, pays for higher returns if the investment horizon is longer. Probably Turkey is one of the very few countries where it doesn't really matter whether you invest in risk-free rates over 2, 5, or 10 years, you would always make the same. Sensitivity is more between 1 week, 1 month, or 6 months. But the reality is that the longer, the better to make money. But as actually we discussed about longer investment horizon, I think that also widens the possibility that we have of creating for our investors investment portfolios where eventually a certain level of risk can be taken into account. It's actually pretty important when we look at you know, the possibility of beating rates using higher risk investments, because that enables the possibility of stretching our investment horizon, being patient for making investments in equities or other riskier solutions, because that obviously historically and statistically always paid much more than what the prevailing level of interest rates has been in any market. And to this extent, there is a further element that is very often neglected by investors, but has become more and more important. I have to say that also provided that interest rates have been so low in global markets that people have been very eager to consider any type of investment solution. There are some qualitative items that become significantly important while making investment decisions. And it has been mentioned here, I've seen in the previous sessions and very briefly during this panel, the topic of Islamic finance. When we started operating in Turkey, Azimut is what I would call an holistic asset management company. Obviously, first of all, we come from Italy, so obviously we have never been dealing with you know, the typical situations that Muslim investors are facing when it comes to placing their savings in a coherent way, obviously to the Sharia. But when we came to Turkey, we started to feel that there was a latent, hidden demand for investment solutions that could help investors to still follow the religious belief and eventually generating a return. And as we're a company here to provide solutions to people who want to make money, invest money, and generate a return, we wanted to develop a line of products that could respond to this need. And funny enough, we launched a global Sukuk fund, so a fund investing in Sukuk issued all around the world, not only Turkey, but from all the countries in the Middle East, Southern Eastern Asia, but also US and Europe. And this fund had a great success, not only in Turkey, but in particular with our non-Muslim investors. As a matter of fact, this has become the largest Sukuk fund in the world because it's probably the only Sukuk fund in the world where there are non-Muslim investors. Because in this search of better investment opportunities with an attractive risk profile, non-Muslim investors have found in the Sukuk space a solution to their needs. And Turkey obviously has a role to play in this market, is a relatively new entrant compared to certain Southern Asian economies or the Middle East, but different than from those economies is a country with an internal market, a pretty large population with a good middle income class, is a country that exports manufactured goods, so it's not only energy related, so it's a country where there's a possibility of showing an economy, a real economic world where Sukuk can eventually support and find an interesting field to be issued as representative of the real economy that is underlying the structures of the same issues. To say that therefore is not only the level of returns that becomes important in this new world, is the risk profile, is the investment horizon, any other element that investor would like to put at play while looking for investment solutions in this new world. And if I can spare a few words on what's going to happen, what are our expectations going forward. Obviously, we are professionals, we are market players every day. We manage money for our investors in Turkey, approximately 3 billion liras, and obviously we need to invest this money in local international markets. So we take a view every day on what's going to happen. Obviously, we do not have definitive solution or answers. What we do, obviously, we manage the risk for multiple scenarios, alternative scenarios, sometimes even occurring together. But what we know is that probably we are going towards a new normal. Interest rates will never be what they were before. Real growth in the global economies, particularly in the advanced economies, will never be what it was. And I think a few factors have been mentioned: aging population, falling participation in the labor markets, obviously the impact of technology. We are going into a world where it's going to be lower for longer. So today it's very much making an assessment of this new normal, trying to figure out that probably our future as individuals or corporates needs to rely on expectations that are rebased in terms of risk, also in terms of interest rates, and try to make out of diversification the way we invest our money through very well-diversified investment portfolios, the main way to essentially generate returns that are adequate for our objectives. So in conclusion, today is not the focus much on what is the level of interest rates. Sometimes we all see the central bank of Turkey rather than the Fed of the ECB, very much like football teams, or sometimes we are brought to a fictional reality where there is a room or a button where interest rates are raised or decreased periodically. The reality is that central banks have an important role as stabilizing factors and players in economies where the growth and the real aspects of life is the main driver. So we need to acknowledge that, as I said, this is changing. We have the right institutions to avoid major volatility, but it's very much up to us, with the people helping us in making investments, finding the right way, with the right diversification, the right allocation of risk, to find the right way to generate returns for ourselves and for our families and future generations.
Thank you, Mr. Medda. Evet, aslında ekleyecekleriniz var mı diye şimdi soracağım ama benim bu panelden anladığım kadarıyla ve mevcut düzenden anladığımız kadarıyla herhalde dünyada değişen bir düzen var, ekonomik düzen. Artık buna sosyal kapitalizm mi deriz, kamu kapitalizm mi deriz bilmiyorum ama daha insan odaklı, eşit daha doğrusu gelir dağılımında adaleti sağlayacak bir sistem. Öyle gözüküyor. Bütün savaşların nedenlerinden biri öyle görünüyor benim gördüğüm kadarıyla. Bu panelde de bütün panelistlerimiz gerçekten aslında özete gideceksek şöyle bir sonuca varıyor. Gerek emeklilik fonları olsun ve gerek diğer fonlar olsun, herhangi bir fon olabilir bu. Sonuçta çok fazla dünyada para var ama çok alt tabakaya gelen bir para, alt gelire gelen bir para yok. Yukarıda biriken bir para var, evet. Ve düşük faiz ortamında alternatif yatırım araçları bulmak zorundayız. Görünen o. Ama bunu yaparken de anladığımız kadarıyla sizin de söylediğiniz gibi Türksel CFO'sunun Murat Bey'in teknolojiyi de son hızda kullanmamız gerekiyor. Görünen o ki Sayın Mary O'Connor da teknolojiden bahsetti. Panelistlerimizin ekleyeceği cümleler varsa alalım, sonra bir iki soru alacağız ama sorular panel konusuyla ilgili lütfen, dolar faiz ne olur değil de daha panel konularıyla ilgili olursa sevinirim. Ekiniz var, ekleyeceğiz bir şey var mı hocam? Sayın O'Connor, ekleyeceğiniz bir şey var mı?
The only thing I would add, we've recently done a survey at Willis of C-suite executives, so CFOs and CEOs around the world, about the impact of technology. And over the next 10 years, they think it is, apart from global economic factors and regulation, which we talked about, the single biggest thing that's going to change everything. And we particularly see changes like in places like Africa and Turkey with Turkcell, where I think some of the emerging markets are actually at the forefront of using technology to help people, to expand the banking within the community, to expand people's opportunities to be able to access finance at a local level and smaller finance. So I think that there's an awful lot of innovation that's happening there everywhere, and it's very, very exciting.
Thank you. Murat Bey?
Ben ekleme olarak bir istatistiği de şöyle söyleyebilirim. 3 sene evvel sanırım yapılan bir çalışmada, eğer bilişim sektöründe bilişimin yapılan yatırım gayri safi milli hasılada %1 arttığı yerde kişi başına etkisi %1.6 ile %1.8 arttırıyor. Yani bu mevcuttaki çözüm yolundaki 3 sene evvelki istatistik bu. Ama bugün geldiğimizde eminim ki çarpanı daha yüksek olacaktır. Onu bir paylaşmak istedim. Güzel bir istatistikten bahsetti. Evet. Ben de öyle bir destek olayım.
Büyüme noktasında da bu 4,5G ailesini zannediyorum ölçümlendi. Çok net değil ama 0,4 puandan bahsediliyor bildiğim kadarıyla. Mr. Medda? Evet, tamamen bugünkü, daha doğrusu şu anki panelle ilgili soruları alabilirim. Ama gerçekten ne olur dolar, faiz lütfen sormayalım. Biz de bilmiyoruz çünkü. Buyurun.
There are so many questions to be asked actually, but two things. One is to Mary. You talked about a lot of factors, but one of the factors that I think would be very interesting to see in the future how it is going to interplay with others is all that cash that the American corporations are sitting on right now. So what's going to happen with that? This is one. And for Giorgio, just wanted to echo what I think. Let's assume that the Fed starts increasing rates sometime this year. To me, it's definitely not in September, but we'll see. How do you think is the let's say investors in fixed rate instruments, which is namely the American government paper. How are they going to react without knowing when the rate increases will stop? Meaning, let's assume they started in November or December, let's say, this year. And then I don't know as an investor when they are going to stop increasing the rates. Do you think there will be any important shift of money back to US without knowing when the rates are going to stop, and thus how much loss I'm going to incur during that process? So that's, those are the two things.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think your point is really interesting around U.S. companies, and we know who they are, particularly the tech companies that are sitting on a lot of cash or are using cash to do share buybacks and things rather than make investment. And I think some of that is being driven by U.S. policy and taxation policy, which I think is particularly at the moment is non-conducive to foreign investments and to thinking about them in a certain way. And I think that over time the U.S. government will be contemplating how to make changes around that as they see the impact of that. The second, I think, is clearly just this buildup of cash that at some point I think there's going to have to be a policy intervention to get them to do. There's a lot of activist investors in the U.S. Who are pushing quite hard on this as well. So I think you're going to see some push from the bottom up. You know, in the U.S. we have this particular phenomenon of investors who get on boards and force companies to do things. So you saw that recently with Microsoft, and I think you'll see it. So you're going to see, I think, change on all fronts. But it will be interesting to see when that loosens up.
Yes, Mr. Mehta.
Well, I think, you know, today we are already in a pretty good position because the question is not whether the Fed will raise or not the interest rates. It will raise the Fed rates at some point. So we already one problem out of our table. Question is for when they will start and for how long they're going to keep increasing rates. Well, it might sound a bit probably controversial, and I hope that our professor from the central bank might agree with me. We shouldn't see the Fed as the master of the world. I mean, they're a pretty important institution, obviously, for global markets, but it's not up to them, as I said, you know, pushing any red button and deciding for the future of humanity, and eventually, let's hope that we're not going to be invested by tsunami afterwards, the world is going to disappear, we're all relocating to the moon. What I want to say is that surely the first increase, September, October, November, is going to be a market event. The second, the third, the fourth will be all market events. What I know is that when I'm looking at the US Treasury yield curve, the market already knows that. We are debating here that is going to happen. And I think the financial markets have already adjusted to the reality of interest rates increasing. Then if you ask me whether 75 to 100 basis points over the next 2 years is adequate to represent the future, my answer would be yes. Can be 50 basis points, can be 150 basis points. This is very much asking ourselves whether Europe will be able to come out of you know, this period of recession faster, whether China will actually manage to find a way to at least fixing people's expectations an adequate level of growth. So I'm not expecting that to be earth-shattering. I'm not expecting this to create any earthquake. I'm expecting probably some volatility. You know, another important element, in particular when it comes to Turkey, because there is always a talk about hot money being invested in Turkey because interest rates are high here and low elsewhere. Remember that particularly the hard currency Turkish yield has already gone up significantly over the last couple of months, not only on the back of expectations of rising Fed rates, but also on widening country risk premium. And if you ask me, obviously we are all facing and read the news every day, sad news every day. Surely the country risk has nudged up a bit, but I think the level of US dollar yields in Turkey has probably already absorbed the next 12 months potential increases in US Treasury yields. So I wouldn't be particularly worried about this series of events to occur in the market.
Thank you, Mr. Mehta. Evet, buyurun.
ifsturkey.com, Artunç Kocabalkan. Four questions to four panelists. Let's start with the Murat Doğaner'den. That's because this is the proof that there's a correlation between the global growth rate or the growth rate and the technology. I had an interview with the ex-representative of the UNDP in Turkey. She told me that Turkey has a project with the Africa poor people with the technology export. There is a positive correlation between the bankable population, mobile banking, and the growth rate. It's clear. Is Turkcell as a global company planning to invest in different financial institutions or cooperating with the financial institutions to, foster the global growth rate or local growth rate in different economies, different countries? And then, thank you for your great presentation. I understand that banks would like to know that are we shifting from the low growth rate and low interest rate to where? What Turkish central bank think about what's next for the world, what's next for Turkey? And for the Mary O'Connor, I understand that the key is in the Fed now. Everybody is trying to understand what's the next move of the Fed. Is Fed aware of what's going to be the impact of its monetary policy, as Rugaram Rajan mentioned? Because Fed has to move with the other global economies, other emerging markets. That's the question. And lastly, I think Giorgio is investing 2.7 billion Turkish lira, which is one of the biggest, investment in Turkey, if we're excluding the banks. What's next for, you? Because you're mostly investing in sukuks and others. But if you would like to see Istanbul as a financial center, is just a banking, Islamic banking and a sukuk is enough for us. Thank you.
Evet. Ben de bir sorsam arkasına bir soru. Buyurun Murat Bey. Soruyu unuttunuz.
Yok, soruyu hatırladım da ben de İngilizce mi cevap vereyim acaba diye şey yaptım da. Dünyada teknoloji sektörüyle finans sektörünün yakınsaması ile ilgili birçok aktivite var. Bunun bugünkü panelle ilgili konusundaki büyümeye olan desteği dediğimiz yerde Afrika bunun en güzel örneği. Artunç da onun altını çizdi zaten. Afrika'daki boyutla Türkiye'deki boyutun örneğini yapıp ondan sonra onu yakın coğrafyaya çekeceğim. Birazcık da hızlı soru cevap yapacağım çünkü sunumu yapmıyorum. Evet. Afrika'da unbanked population dedim, bankacılığı kullanmayan kesim çok fazla. Bu insanların da kendi aralarında para transferinden tutun bir güven aradıkları, regülasyonlarının da olmadığı bir yerde bir ticaretin dönmesi lazım. Ticaret büyümeyi getiriyor. Afrika'da telekom sektörü, bilişim sektörüyle bankacılık sektörünün yakınsamasından dünyanın en büyük örnekleri çıktı.
Evet.
M-Pesa'lardan biliyorsunuz dünyanın örneği. Ama bir tane daha onun aynısı çıkmadı. O da doğru. Şimdi Türkiye'de gerçeğine baktığınızda Türkiye'de de 78 milyonun içerisinde 18,5 milyon unbanked population var. Belki bu rakam çoğunuz için sürpriz olabilir. Bilen biliyor ama Türkiye'de de belli bir kitle var. Her bölgenin bunu çıkartmaması ile ilgili bir durumda o ülkenin regülasyonu var. Ama Türkiye'deki bankacılık sektörüyle Afrika'ya baktığınız zaman veya regülasyonuna baktığınız zaman çok büyük fark var. Aynı örnek Pakistan'da var. Pakistan'da baktığınız zaman Pakistan'da 6-7 tane operatör var ve hepsi sırayla banka alıyorlar. Evet. Sırbistan'da var, Rusya'da var. Telekom operatörleri banka alıyorlar veya bankalarla entegre oluyorlar. Japonya'da var. Türkiye'de biz ne yapacağımızla ilgili size şunu söyleyeyim. Bizim şu andaki 35 milyon hat yaklaşık 20 milyon kişiyle her gün iletişimimiz var. Ve açıkladık zaten, oldu değil mi? 2 hafta oldu. 2 hafta evvel açıkladık. Turkcell olarak bir Consumer Finance kampanya kuruyoruz. Tüketici finansman şirketi kuruyoruz. İnşallah yılbaşında olacak. Açıklandığı anda Türkiye'nin en büyük tüketici finansman şirketi olacak boyutta çünkü.
O zaman
yaptığı
siz de
işlere göre.
üretiyorsunuz artık.
Bu da bizim büyümeye ivme olacaktır diye düşünüyorum. Çünkü elinizdeki bütün cihazların hepsi şu andaki bizim yaptığımız, terminaller sadece şu anda bizim gördüğümüz cihazlar. Hepsi birer ekran. Şu önünüzdeki ekran, buradaki ekran, bütün bunların hepsi 4G teknolojisiyle birlikte esasında 4G teknolojisinin açıklaması data için yaratılmış altyapı.
Son cümleyi de alalım mı?
Son cümleye göre dolayısıyla Consumer Finance House'tan başlıyor ve bunun daha devamı devam eder. Artunç.
Evet. Sayın Ersan.
Thank you, Artunç Bey. I will respond in English just to respond here. From low growth to low interest to high growth and high interest rate. For that, actually, these all related questions. That's why we are wondering about what's going to happen to Fed. Most likely, I agree with the speakers, with our friend, that there will be a new normal. But we have been discussing this new normal for about the last 5 years. Given that there are this sort of discussions, I mean, in the discourses of the people, more and more we are emphasizing the new normal. Most likely the world is not going to be same. So we will not move to the old normal of high interest and high growth rate environment. Most likely all these actually solutions, alternative forms of investments are actually leading us even more financialization of consumers, financialization of the corporates. So since the global crisis, it's about 7 years now, the world is not same anyway. So the starting point, even we think about the new normal right now, the starting point is not same anymore. 7 years passed, we are more financialized economies for the consumers, for the corporates. So my sense is also that we are likely to have a new normal, but in this new normal, my personal sense is that we will have lower growth rate than the past. And more importantly, not just about the lower growth rates than the past, but the structure of the economy changes. Like yesterday and today, Ibrahim Turan mentioned yesterday, our Governor Erdem Baş has mentioned yesterday, today Mr. Caruana has mentioned this productivity issue, how to boost the productivity. It's more of a structural issue. That's why once we start discussing more about the productivity issue, it tells us that actually we are discussing about the new normal. And most likely it will not be that easy to boost the productivity growth, and same for the overall growth rate.
Thank you. Ben de İngilizce teşekkür edeyim o zaman. Meral Kanner.
So in terms of the Fed, I think the Fed is well aware of the impact of what it does, and and in fact in the FT this morning, I think there was something saying that they were considering holding off on the rate increase. But I think the Fed it's got to balance its multiple roles. The first to drive the U.S. economy, but then also the impact that the U.S. economy has on everything else. If anything, I think I've seen since the financial crisis, the regulators around the world are so much more interconnected than they ever were, which is one of the reasons I think, one, the regulation's not going to change, but two, I think there is much more of an impetus to manage the world economy, because everyone, and particularly the U.S., which I think didn't think this as much before, knows that it's connected and that the impacts of things that happen here will impact the U.S. as much as the U.S. will impact the rest of the world.
Thank you. Mr. Medda.
Yes, very briefly. What Istanbul should do more to attract foreign players. I think there is almost everything here that is required to set up a business. This is the reason why we are here. Not only the central bank, but also a very strong, solid regulator. When I'm looking at the regulation for financial products, capital market products, we are talking about top-notch standards, nothing really to compare with other emerging markets, something very much in line with US and Europe. I think there is only one thing to change, and that is the behavior of investors. I think individuals and corporates should stop going to the bank to ask financial advisory. They should stop asking their banking representatives what to do with their money, because banks, with all the respect, obviously, of very well-established institutions in Turkey, but banks like in Turkey and any other country in the world, they have a huge conflict of interest. They run another business aside, they lend their money to someone, they make a pretty healthy interest margin. So the money that you leave in a deposit is actually used by the bank to do something else, to make money on their own P&L. So this is a conflict of interest. I think institutions and individuals, they need to be advised for the best of their interest. Only two numbers I would like to share with you. In Turkey, the size of the asset management industry is 4% of the GDP. Compared to Brazil, there the ratio is 50%. So even looking at other emerging markets, this market is by 10 times underdeveloped as opposed to some of the peers. I don't mention the stats in Europe where these ratios are well above 100%. So I think people, they need to know that there is something else beyond. They should think that if in 10 years we moved from a Nokia mobile phone to have an iPhone or a Samsung, we can also move in making our investment decisions in a different way. So I think infrastructure is there, it's more us getting used to it.
Thank you, Mr. Meda. Evet, öğlen yemeği zannediyorum zaten ama Mine Hanım'dan alalım bir soru.
Giorgio'ya bir şey sormak istiyorum. Öncelikle sunumlar için çok teşekkür ederim. Ben de çok keyifliydi hakikaten dinlemek. Bildiğim kadarıyla Azimut Grup son 5 yılda Türkiye'ye portföy yönetim sektörüne yatırım yapan tek kurum. Üstelik bu yatırım 2012'den itibaren çok agresif bir biçimde yapıyor. Az önce Artunç Bey de söyledi, sukuk olamaz bunun tek gerekçesi diye. Türkiye'ye yatırım yapmaktaki motivasyon ya da diğerlerinin görmediği şey nedir Azimut'un? Gördüğü onu merak ediyorum.
Yes.
Well, yeah, you rightly mentioned, the relevance of our investments. Over the last 4 years, we invested approximately $20 million in Turkey, in the Turkish capital markets, to develop an industrial platform. That is a sign of commitment that the group obviously has in a country where over time, over the last 3 years, we had lots of ups and many, many downs. So we have done that throughout the cycle and the volatility, the issues and the concerns. Obviously, as people dealing with money, we know that where the crisis also there are the biggest opportunities to make investments. And we see in Turkey today a huge opportunity, not only for the very small size of the market, but because interest rates are very high. That is, funnily enough, the reason why we are in Turkey, because interest rates are high today, but as opposed to what's happening around the world, will start declining. I'm talking about nominal rates, real rates. And also, this is a country where, as I said, I have hope for the change, but I see the change, even myself, of the last 3.5 years here. People, they are thinking different. So they know that they can come to a non-bank financial institution and find the proper advisory. Sukuk represents a very small part of our assets. Of the Turkish assets is approximately 10%, so 90% is anything else, equities, fixed income, commodities. These markets are liquid enough today to create very strong and solid solutions for investors away from the typical banking saving products. So we see this as a potential. We're going to keep investing over the next few years.
Thank you, Mr. Meda. Evet, artık herhalde yemek saati geldi. Herkes gözümüzün içine bakıyor. Teşekkür ediyorum ben Doçent Doktor Ahmet Faruk Aysan, Türkiye Cumhuriyet Merkez Bankası Banka Meclis Üyesine ve Sayın Mero Kanırak, Küresel Finans Enstitüsü bayağı bu şey gibi oldu. Şu şişe bu şişe gibi oldu ama biz Grup Holding'den teşekkür ediyoruz. Ve size Murat Doğaner'den tekrar teşekkürler. Türkiye Grup CFO'su ve Mr. Med'de teşekkür ediyoruz. Azimut Holding Grup Ülke Müdürü tekrar teşekkür ediyoruz. Sizlere teşekkür ediyoruz.